Hello, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Shiaght Laa, a programme that looks at the island's rich cultural life. I'm Bob Carswell, sé Robert de Carslach mish, as bevailiam siwa shahaltacha gus Shiaght Laa, Claire bestien bé cultural way in Elian. Sinero Shorje Shiaght Laa, in this edition of Shiaght Laa. An undate as Dechus scan Shoil de Goil and Slough, the same date and two important matters to attend to. We hear from Breesha Maddrell of Culture Vannin and from Bethany de Legh Runciman of the Isle of Man Poetry Society. We embark on this, the first edition of Shiaght Laa, in a new short series, and so what's on? Well, of course things are gearing up for Christmas with Christmas fairs of one kind or another. But there are some art displays up and running, and at the Studio 42 Gallery in Port St Mary there's an exhibition of the distinctive work of Eileen Scher, which also gives you an opportunity to buy some of her paintings. However, you'll have to be quick as that exhibition closes at the end of this month, so just a week remaining. At the House of Vannin in Peel there's an exhibition called Crucible, Sculptures and Drawings of Robert Jones, member of the Royal Society of Sculptors. This features steel sculptures and ink drawings by Manx sculptor Robert Jones, inspired by prominent Manx sculptors including his mentor, Michael Sandel, and the work of Brian Neal. That's something you'll need to explore fairly soon as well, because the exhibition comes to an end on the 14th of January. Meanwhile, in the Manx Museum in Douglas there are two exhibitions to have a look at. By design, you can immerse yourself in a new colourful wall of recently digitised prints and posters from the Manx National Heritage Archive, and as well as the printed materials you can find out about the techniques and technologies associated with the art of printing. There are sketches and stencils by Hugo Dachinger, who was interned on the Isle of Man in 1940. There are some of the historic, attractive tourist posters, and some of the island's businesses catching the eye. There are also some of the early 19th century printing plates for card money, and card money was issued by merchants because small change was in such short supply. That exhibition, called By Design, is running until the 31st of March next year. And at the Manx Museum you can also see an exhibition called Home, which is a creative response to the island as seen through the eyes of artists from the Creative Network, which is an association of 65 artists altogether. The artworks in Home represent different ideas and aspects of the Isle of Man. Some are real, some are ideal, some are celebratory, and some are critical. Artworks include paintings, sculptures and decorative arts, and that'll be running until the 14th of April next year. Ta sin gréad de bhfuil an chléir seo chit bé cultúráil an Elian, ach sé cúismhúr sin na bhfuil an cultúr. Ta slaid in the women Jane ágal sin de chit set múr de chachléin rid, as de menic tad spiridáil fodí na síltnach, ridanach ons king slai, as de bénan enjach chaustaide slai, coraru ginu ridanach lé, na crúnían. Ta sin na chláisn hanna mach an taispinus an J. Ellen and Súlia, as mar aran Jane cultúrain ta sin goldi ian oru ons lauten. Ach, ta ridanach mach na ta sin da agan vis tarn stiach sin, de smunionair de down. Ach son na Ellen an heen, var ridanach greinige de grú an over shen, as ta ginu image bas njaart de slai corpoil, de chummen of a gintok. Ach, henken ai dau as nin shieldness ons acht enjach. Na san mi nimmets klaasjen mach dunje ren film. Wij ersen smunjen na eien sjen, kren fev an eien sjen scan shoil day, kren hacht het kochon tris cultuur. De cultuur goil stiacht na ridden te slai kunte de wei few, na creduanok, na chingagenok, na kleachtigenok, a rein as downs, na sporten dat goil arnon, as de jar out de chuljurid, vis gulle ginu egg, as vis gulle rein na kovudisanok. Culture is an all-embracing term for whatever it is that societies share that makes that society distinct. Here in the island there are facets of life not found elsewhere, and we celebrate a unique Manx identity. And there's a distinct way in which people's contribution to that can be recognised, and it was something that the Director of Culture Vannin, Breesha Maddrell, told me about, but with the warning that time is short.
Friday the 1st of December, it's the deadline for the RBV Cultural Award, the Reih Bleeaney Vanannan. And this is the island's January honours, if you like, for Manx culture. And nominations are open to members of the public throughout November. So this is your final chance to have your say for who should be the RBV.
So who are people able to nominate for this award?
You can nominate individuals or organisations, and they can be active in what is a broad definition, a broad interpretation of Manx culture. So people have been given the RBV for many different reasons. Fiona McArdle was awarded it last year for her work for the Manx language, Manx music, song and dance, Manx history, and so much more. We've had people who've received it for work on genealogy and land division, for music, for collecting, for broadcasting, for the language itself, for dialect theatre, wildlife and environment, Manx crosses, field walking, you name it. So it's a really wide category.
And it's not just been individuals either, has it, over the years?
No, we've got organisations like the Bunskull Gilgach and the Manx Folk Dance Society who've been awarded it. So you can think of a group of people as well as an individual who you think. And it could be that they've achieved something outstanding this year, or it could be that cumulatively they have done so much to support Manx culture.
Now, how are people able to put in their nominations then for it?
It's quite easy. You go to Culture Vannan's website, and we'll also have forms lying around in libraries usually. And if you just look, there'll be a link for awards, and the RBV is clearly marked. There are forms there. You fill in a form to say who you are and who you're nominating, and you keep that separate to your actual nomination. And we've got guidelines of the sorts of things that the judging panel looks for, the information that they need. You've got to assume that they know nothing about this person, or the organisation, even if they're quite well known to you. And then write something that celebrates how wonderful they are.
So the deadline's coming up at 12 noon on Friday the 1st of December. And the award itself, what's the background to the award?
Well, the award came about through the work of Stephen Quayle, also known as Ken Quayle. And the award comes really from another award, the Vannin Trophy, that Eric Alstwick designed. And it's this idea of recognising Vannin as the patron of culture, of Manx culture, and it's really that need to celebrate Manx culture and recognise it in a different way. So the prize winner receives a cheque for money, or a bank transfer these days, and a medal, and they can have the letters RBV after their name. So it is a Manx New Year honour.
You mentioned a panel of judges then. What is the panel of judges made up of?
The panel of judges is made up of representatives from different learned societies and organisations on the island. So we have somebody from Culture Vannin, from Manx National Heritage, from Isle of Man Arts Council, from Shiaght Gilgach, and from Cruinnicht.
Director of Culture Vannin, Breesha Maddrell, and your opportunity to nominate someone for the important cultural award, the Reih Bleeaney Vanannan, to be presented in the new year. But the deadline for nominations is coming up at 12 noon on Friday, the 1st of December. As well as the important annual award of the Reih Bleeaney Vanannan, Culture Vannin is now involved in another annual cultural award. Breesha Maddrell, of course, the forthcoming Reih Bleeaney Vanannan takes precedence at the moment, with people having to put nominations in fairly shortly. But recently as well, Culture Vannin has been associated with another award, another cultural award.
That's right, it's the Sophia Morrison Award, and it's for the best student at GCSE equivalent in Manx, which is called the TCG, the Taoiseach Cadjan Gilgach. And it's an award that comes with a medal with depicting Sophia Morrison, a trophy for the school to display if they can, which is the Cairvai Trophy, and £500. It was awarded at the Coosh Cavernous Crew event in Castletown to Matilda Watson, who is a pupil at QE2 High School, and she achieved the highest mark at the TCG.
And yet she must have been one of the younger people taking the TCG.
Well, this is a remarkable thing that the past pupils from the Bunschool Gaeilge who have learnt through the medium of Manx, they take their GCSE, the TCG, early, and she is one of those students, and she's a very gifted young speaker of Manx and generally fantastic person.
And the Sophia Morrison Award has come via Culture Vannin, and you're going to be awarding it every year at the Coosh now. But what's the background to the award?
Well, there's a wonderful man called Crellan Frost who people will remember, and he was related to Sophia Morrison's family. So Sophia Morrison's mother was Louisa Crellan, and that's where the Crellan in his name comes from. And he was married also to a Manx speaker, Carol Frost, and he wanted to leave a legacy, really, and he wanted to show his confidence in the future of Manx and to show that Manx is worth a lot to not only to him but to younger generations. And he came up with this idea all himself to create this award. He knew exactly what he wanted the trophy to look like. He wanted it to be not a modest award. He wanted it to be a generous award to really reward and inspire young Manx speakers.
We speak, I suppose, in a blasé sort of way about Sophia Morrison as a figure. This is the Sophia Morrison Award. But what do we see as her relevance today?
Sophia Morrison's relevance today, I think, is seen in so many different places. In connection with this award, we think of her in connection to the Manx language. She was secretary of the Manx Language Society in Shiaght Laa. She was somebody who is interested in getting young people to sing and speak in Manx, and so they were campaigning to have Manx introduced in the schools. You know, over 100 years ago, it's really quite inspiring to think of that, to get young people singing in Manx at the Guild. They sponsored classes, they were actively recruiting teachers, and it's that sort of forward thinking and knowing that if you put the language and if you put the culture into the hands of our young people, they're the people who will carry it forward, and that's a really an inspiring thing to do. It's a really future thinking thing to do.
Breesha Maddrell again, and the Sophia Morrison Award for the best result in the Cheis Chaj in Ghilgach by a person under 18, presented this year to Matilda Watson of Peel. As we heard, as part of that award, there's prize money of £500 and an engraved medal, and the specially created Care Vi trophy in the shape of a Viking longship. And that's designed by Jane Robbins, who also designed the very striking large plaque in honour of Brian MacStowell, the late Brian Stowell, which graces the wall to the side of the doorway into Culture Vannin's headquarters in St John's. The Sophia Morrison Award, through the TCM and CN Frost bequest to Culture Vannin, was presented at Uncoosh at the beginning of this month. And at that event too, David Allison was presented with the Londair Award, the lantern, that is, which celebrates individuals or organisations who shine a light on or for the Manx language. Masaw Molia Solia de Matilda Watson as David Allison. Ons foglior Archibald Crigeen te cor bardach na bardúnach son a poet, a bard. As they chit der an hachtú ranna as fi jen Shiacht Laa jeg, je junu na arslan as na foglan son ansen tashin bio, as blior, as beige, mar shir de perche na bardúni jou hin ta grey. Ach son shen as olju ta na ogel san oglier egge, bardún as de grey de bel shen, a doleful song. Ach, Kreim of his pech enjach giri skriw me gion riddenach onsaag manre, de jene woord eilje jay. Fuddy de welle pech shen na vaardach sha na vaardúnach. Sen oglior Crigeen ten vogel drain, rhyme, meter, poetry, verse. As fuddy de lizig shen tiggle shen, mar kumma na vogelen, en acht had skruwt schies. De voglior John Kelly goes jack a vogel, filiach, son poetry, as Philly, a philosopher, a poet, as lem de wel shen chit by an yearnish. Stolia tickle rau foglan gull immadeg sly as heel John Kelly foglan bousen, na rau John Kelly Juno Arish jen this egger yernish as gilg na halbe, de lina na beismunion de ve burna gilg. In Douglas Bay is what is now generally known as the Tower of Refuge, built to assist those shipwrecked on the dangerous reef so close to the entrance to Douglas Harbour. The Tower of Refuge was a name suggested by a poem of an interested visitor to the island, William Wordsworth, who described it in his poem On Entering Douglas Bay, and he called it a Tower of Refuge, to the else forlorn. It shows that poetry can have a way of encapsulating something in a memorable way. And, as it happens, there's an urgent call for poetry just at the moment. Bethany de Legh Runciman, you're the chairperson of the Isle of Man Poetry Society, and in the past number of years the Isle of Man Poetry Society has organised what it calls a poetry trail. So perhaps you could tell us about the background to the poetry trail, what it is.
In essence, the poetry trail is a poetry competition, and then either 10 winners, or in the past there's been up to 20 winners. These winners have their poem put onto a beautiful fluorescent yellow poster, and the trail the posters are put along a trail of windows in either shop windows, libraries, cafe windows. So I'm having them done in Douglas this time, Douglas Town Centre. So there'll be a poetry trail from the Villa Marina down all the way through to the sea terminal. And those 10 posters, the poems, there'll be a trail guide in Douglas libraries to say where each poem is, and you can follow the trail round. So it's getting poetry into the general public, where the public can see and read poems. The trail's up for about 4 to 6 weeks to give people a chance to go down there. And it's really, you can have a game to find all 10 poems. The poems, obviously, because they're in a public display, have to be suitable for the public. So the trail actually started way back in 2013. It was certainly led by Ruth Baxendale, who was the previous chair of the Isle of Man Poetry Society. And they came up with an idea of a way of getting poetry into easy access, and also to have a competition that anybody, poet or not a regular poet, could enter. So that's how it was set up, and ran for 2 years, and then in 2015 I took over, and this is in fact the 10th Isle of Man Poetry Trail there's been. When I started running the trail, I also set up a launch evening, because I thought it was important, first of all, to get the winning poems read out in the public, but also to gather poets together, to gather people who have an interest in poetry together for an evening. And the 10 winning entries this year will be read out, but I encourage other poets to read out on the evening. So any poets that haven't won who want to have a go at reading out loud in front of people. And it's a very informal atmosphere. We do it in St George's Church because we have all the PA systems and refreshments after we've done the poetry reading. And we're very pleased to be sponsored for the Poetry Trail by the Manx Lottery Trust. And we also have support from Culture Vannin and the Isle of Man Arts Society. So this year's Poetry Trail, there's going to be 10 winning poems, which will go up in Douglas Town Centre. The closing date is Friday, 1st of December. What I ask about the poems is they have to be less than 25 lines long. This is because the poem has to fit comfortably onto a piece of A4 paper. If you send me 2 pages of poems, you will not be put forward to judging. So, the judges this year are Ruth Baxendale and Muriel Garland. I like to have members of the Poetry Society involved, and these two people are very experienced poets and been with the Society for a long time. Muriel Garland is wife of the late Jeff Garland as well, and Jeff put a lot of time and effort into the Poetry Trail too over the years. So the closing date is 1st of December, and then there's a period of me writing and anonymising all the poems. So only one poet can win with one poem, and the judges have no idea who's written any of the poems. And then just around Christmas time, we'll have the judging, and then beginning of January, the winners will be notified. And then Tony Garland, who is the son of the late Jeff Garland, he does all our designing of the posters and our poetry booklets. And he designs the posters beautifully. And the launch evening is the 3rd of February, Saturday 3rd of February, in the evening from 8 o'clock, and then the week after that I will get posters put in the places in Douglas, and then those posters will be up probably about 6 weeks. So that's the trail. The winners, what they get as a winner is their poem written up and displayed in Douglas, and they also get a copy of the poster themselves to take home, and we also give them a free Manx Reflections booklet as well.
For the written work for the Poetry Trail that's coming up now, how do people get that work to you?
Right, there's our Facebook page with the Isle of Man Poetry Society, Isle of Man Poetry Trail are on Facebook, and if people email poetry@manxcat.org.uk, I can send them out an email form or postal entry. The Manx Reflections booklets have the entry forms in as well. If you come along on Sunday evenings, there'll be forms there. If you haven't got email, then if you text or even phone me on 481792, I can get an entry form out to you. All the libraries on the Isle of Man, all the libraries, apart from the family library and the mobile library, all the libraries have entry forms and guidelines. And so if you go into a library and ask, they will have the forms. And I know that because I personally put them all in each one. And the Bridge Bookshop in Port Erin has entry forms in as well.
Bethany de Legh Runciman, go to my Morad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bethany de Legh Runciman, Chair of the Isle of Man Poetry Society, and that call for entries for the next Isle of Man Poetry Trail. Look out for entry forms in the library or look in your copy of the winter edition of Manx Reflections, and make sure you get your entries into Bethany by the 1st of December for that trail which is taking place in February and March. You can get in touch with Bethany by emailing poetry@manxcat.org.uk or give Bethany a ring on 481792. That's poetry@manxcat.org.uk or ring 481792. Tomorrow evening, Friday the 24th of November, the Erin Arts Centre Film Club will be presenting an acclaimed film by independent Cornish filmmaker Mark Jenkins, an unsettling and haunting folk horror piece called Ennis Men, which is Cornish for Stone Island. It starts at 7:30 and tickets are £6, but just £2 for under 18s. Also tomorrow evening, Friday the 24th of November, the Isle of Man Victorian Society has its November meeting, free to members and only £2 for non-members to go along and pay at the door. This month, David Martin's illustrated talk will be about bridges, stone slabs to Victorian pinnacles. That's in the St Ninian's School Lecture Theatre at 8 o'clock, and access for both pedestrians and vehicles is from Somerset Road. As Shiaght Laa Shiaght Laa. That's it for now. From me, Bob Carswell, Bompeen, Robert a Karslach, Sledden you.